The Detroit homeless shelter smelled of death. Not the obvious kind that comes from a morgue, but the slow, lingering smell of detergent mixed with despair. Olivia Reed stood at the entrance, her fingers wrapped around a tape recorder, her gaze sliding over the faces of people whose lives had long since disappeared into the grey walls. She was looking for Emily Welch, the woman whose voice on the anonymous recording sounded like a shard of glass piercing her mind. The doctor took my name. He took everything. Olivia had come here to find her, but she sensed that she was looking for more than just a person, an answer to a question she hadn't yet had a chance to ask. Emily sat in the corner, her thin shoulders swaddled in a tattered sweater, her eyes as empty as burnt-out lamps. Olivia approached, her footsteps echoing on the floorboards like a hammer on a nail. "Emily?" she asked, and the woman looked up, her gaze sliding over Olivia's face without lingering. "I don't know who I am," Emily whispered, her voice thin as cobwebs. "He took my name. He took everything." Olivia sat down next to him, the recorder clicking softly as it began recording. "Who is he?" she asked, trying to speak softly, but her own pulse was beating in her temples, like a warning. "Who took your name?" Emily froze, her fingers shaking as if the words were caught in her throat. "Dr. Crowe. Nathan Crowe. He treated me for depression, but I don't remember how I got here. I don't remember who I am." She pulled at the collar of her sweater, revealing her neck. There, just beneath the skin, was a scar, and beneath it, something hard, metallic. Olivia leaned over, her breath hitching. An implant. Engraved with NC. Chicago greeted her with a coldness, not the kind that chills her to the bone, but the kind that freezes her thoughts, making them move more slowly, like viscous syrup. Dr. Nathan Crowe's clinic was on the outskirts of town, its white walls too clean for a place that healed souls. Olivia walked in, her heels clicking on the marble floor, echoing off the walls like a whisper that never stopped. The receptionist, Caitlin Morrow, greeted her with a smile as sharp as a scalpel. "Crowe will see you in 5 minutes, she said, her voice as smooth as the surface of water with something dark lurking beneath it. Nathan Crowe was tall, his face a mask of calm, but his eyes burned with the cold fire of a man who had seen too much. He shook Olivia's hand, his fingers cold as metal. "Ms. Reed, you are a journalist," he said, his voice low, almost hypnotic. "How may I help you?" "I'm investigating a case of patients who have gone missing after being treated at your clinic," Olivia replied, her gaze hard but something inside her trembling. "Emily Welch, she mentioned your name." Crowe smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Emily was a difficult case. Depression, paranoia. She ran away from the clinic before completing her course. "It's a shame I couldn't help her." He spread his hands, as if that explained everything. Olivia took out her recorder and turned on the recording. "And the implant in her neck, with your initials?" Crowe's smile widened, but his eyes narrowed. "The implants are part of an experimental therapy. They help stabilize neural pathways, but Emily, she wasn't ready." He stood up, signaling that the conversation was over. "If that's all you have, Ms. Reed, I have patience." The night was muggy in the motel, the air thick with the smell of damp and cheap soap. Olivia sat at her desk, her laptop humming like a living thing. She was digging through a database she'd hacked with the help of an old contact, a hacker she wouldn't name. Crowe's patients, dozens of names, addresses, diagnoses, and 3 marked transferred: Emily Welch, a John Doe from Philadelphia, Sarah Miller from New Orleans. All found with no memories. Implants. She opened the file with Emily's photo, her face twisted in fear, her eyes empty as a doll's. Olivia clenched her fists, feeling a chill creep up her spine. This wasn't healing. This was erasing. But why? And why had Crowe chosen them? Suddenly the screen flickered and the laptop turned off. Olivia jerked, her fingers flying over the keys, but the screen was dead. The silence in the room became thick, oppressive, broken only by her breathing. She stood up, went to the window, pulled back the curtain. The street was empty, but the light from the street lamp flickered, as if from someone's footstep. Olivia froze, her hand falling on the recorder in her pocket. Someone was here, and that someone knew she was digging. In the morning she found a note under her door, a simple piece of paper folded neatly, like a letter from hell. One word, written in black ink. Stop. Olivia clutched it, feeling the paper crumble under her fingers like her own thoughts. She knew this was just the beginning. Dr. Crowe was more than just a doctor. He was a shadow moving in her mind. And Tacoma, this city of rusty veins, was ready to tell his secrets, or bury her with them. The gloom in David Lynn's office was thick as tar on the soles of your feet. The air was thick with the smell of old paper and something acrid, not fear, but a sense of foreboding that clings to your throat like smoke from a smoldering cigarette. Olivia Reed sat on the edge of her chair, her fingers sliding over the blueprints David had thrown down on the table as if he wanted to get rid of them forever. The sheets were covered with lines and symbols, like a map of the veins that pulsed beneath a dead man's skin. David stood by the window, his frame trembling in the dim light of the street lamps, his voice faltering like wires in the wind. He doesn't heal, Olivia. He cuts pieces out of your head. His implants aren't a cure. They're a cage. He turned, his eyes gleaming like a cornered animal. 3 days, 72 hours, and you're an empty vessel. No memories, no traces, just his voice, whispering in your skull. Olivia stared at the blueprint, a spider-like device with spindly legs that latched onto a brain. Her fingers tightened on the edge of the table, her nails scratching the wood. "Why?" she asked, her voice dry as sand crunching underfoot. David laughed harshly, the sound bouncing off the walls like a bullet off concrete. "Why? Because he can, because he likes holding a leash. Crowe's not a doctor, he's a butcher with cold hands and a smile that makes your blood run cold." He stepped closer, his breath smelling of coffee and something sour. "I saw what he did to Emily. She was my friend. Now she doesn't even remember her own name." Olivia thought of Emily Welch, her face chalk white, her eyes as empty as a burned-out house. She'd seen her in Tacoma, by the old pier, muttering about the shadows taking her life. Olivia swallowed, her throat burning. Who's behind this? Who's allowing this? David froze, his gaze darting to the door as if he expected it to swing open. The clinic, the council. They know what he's doing, but they're keeping quiet. His toys make money, millions if it works. And if not, well, who's going to remember a few missing souls in this town? He leaned in, his whisper sharp as a blade. He's watching, Olivia, always watching, and you're already on his radar. Philadelphia greeted her with dampness and the smell of rust. On a bench by the river sat John Doe, a man without a name, hunched over like a statue that had been forgotten. His fingers fiddled with his collar, revealing a scar on his neck. Thin as a thread, but deep as an abyss. Olivia sat down next to him, her boots leaving dirty marks on the wet board. "John," she said quietly but firmly, "do you remember Crowe?" He shuddered, his lips trembling as if the words were trying to get out but couldn't find their way. "It's inside. Its voice. It says that I'm nothing, that I should forget." His hand clutched her wrist, his fingers as cold as the river behind her. "I hear it, every night." Olivia gritted her teeth, her gaze fixed on the scar. She knew it wasn't just a mark, it was a signature. Crowe left them like an artist marking a canvas. She stood, her footsteps echoing on the pavement, wondering how many more like John were out there, wandering the streets, not knowing who they were. The Crowe Clinic sat in downtown Tacoma, its white walls a slap in the face, a lie against the rusty city. Olivia walked in under a false name, Anna Clare, a fictional woman in fictional pain. The receptionist, Caitlin Morrow, led her into an office, her smile as thin as the edge of a glass about to crack. "The doctor will be here soon," she said, and her voice was too smooth, like the surface of water before a storm. Nathan Crowe came in silently, his footsteps echoing. Tall, with a face carved from stone, he looked at her with eyes that held no warmth, only a cold gleam, like a knife in the dark. "Miss Clare," he said, his voice flowing like oil, coating her mind. "Tell me what's troubling you." Olivia began to speak, her words memorized like a roll, but her eyes slid around the room. On the table was a file with a name on it, Sarah Miller, another victim found in New Orleans, empty as a shell. Olivia clenched her fists under the table, feeling her pulse pounding in her temples. Crowe caught her gaze, his lips twitching in a smile that made her skin crawl. "You're tense," he said, leaning closer. His breath was warm, but there was a chill to the grave about him. "My methods will help. You'll forget everything that's been bothering you. The pain will go away. You'll become a blank slate." He paused, his eyes boring into her like needles. "That's what you want, isn't it?" Olivia nodded, but inside she was screaming. She didn't want to forget. She wanted to rip the truth out of his hands, like ripping a weapon from an enemy. "Yes," she lied, her voice hard as steel. The night in the motel was heavy, the air heavy on her chest, heavy with the smell of mildew and cheap soap. Olivia sat at her desk, her laptop flickering like a beacon in the fog. She dug through data she'd gleaned from an old acquaintance, a faceless man whose fingers knew how to pick digital locks. The list of Crowe's patients was long, names, dates, diagnoses, and 3 highlighted in red: Emily Welch, John Doe, Sarah Miller. All with implants, all without a past. The screen flickered, and the laptop died. Silence fell on the room like a slab of concrete. Olivia jumped up, her hand reaching for the window. The street was empty, but a shadow flickered under the streetlight, too fast, too alive. She clutched the recorder in her pocket, feeling the cold creep through her veins. Someone was there. Someone new. There was a note under her door that morning. A simple note, folded in half, with one word written in black. "Stop." Olivia crumpled it, the paper cracking like bones under a blow. She knew this wasn't the end, but the beginning. Crowe was a shadow moving behind her, and Tacoma, a city of rusty veins and dead souls, held his secrets within its walls. She would find them, or they would find her. The rain pounded the roof, its rhythm uneven as the pulse of a dying man. Olivia stood at the window looking out at the streets that glittered like black glass. Her fingers fiddled with the recorder, recording thoughts into the darkness. "He doesn't just erase memories," she whispered, her voice shaking with exhaustion. "He collects them, stores them, uses them. But for what?" She remembered John, what he had said about the voice in her head. She remembered Emily, muttering about shadows, and Sarah Miller, whose name lay on Crowe's desk like a trophy. This was no accident. It was a pattern. Olivia knew the answer was out there, in the sterile hallways of the clinic, in David's blueprints, in the scars on the necks of the victims. She turned off the recorder, her gaze fixed on the night. Tacoma breathed around her, its rusty veins flowing beneath the asphalt, whispering secrets that were waiting to be unleashed. Olivia stepped toward the door, her boots leaving wet footprints on the floor. She wouldn't stop, not now, not when the truth was so close you could taste it, bitter, cold, like blood on your lips. The air in the abandoned hospital was heavy, musty and metallic, a taste that settled on the tongue like rust. Olivia Reed stood at the entrance, her fingers clutching a flashlight whose beam flickered, picking out broken gurneys and scraps of bandages that lay on the floor like the remains of someone's hopes. Emily Welch, pale as a ghost, walked beside them, her footsteps quiet, but every sound echoing in the empty hallways like a forgotten scream. They had come here for the truth. But Olivia sensed that the truth was not saving them here, it was suffocating them. "He experimented here," Emily whispered, her voice hoarse as if the words were being torn from her throat. "I remember the light and the voice, his voice." She stopped at a door marked Operating Room 3. The door was ajar, and a chill blew through the crack, like a grave. Olivia pushed open the door, and the hinges creaked like bones being broken under torture. It was dark inside, but the beam of the flashlight revealed a table stained with what looked like dried blood. Instruments hung on the wall, scalpels, clamps, needles, their metal glinting dully like the eyes of an animal in the dark. Emily froze, her fingers clutching Olivia's sleeve. "I was here," she breathed. He was taking my thoughts, like threads, one by one." Olivia swallowed, her throat dry. She stepped toward the desk, noticing a box full of folders on the floor. She opened it, dust swirling up like ash. Inside were notes, names, dates, diagnoses, and notes, overwritten. Memory stabilization, complete suppression. Her fingers trembled as she saw the name, Emily Welch. Procedure complete, transferred to Detroit. Dozens more names nearby, all with notes of transfers to different cities. "He erases them," Olivia whispered, her voice quiet but sharp as a blade. "He erases their memories and sends them to nowhere, but why? What does he do with them?" Emily shook her head, her eyes as empty as broken windows. "I don't know, I don't remember, but I hear him, in my head. He's telling me that I'm nothing, that I should forget." She clutched her temples, her face twisted in pain. "Help me, Olivia. Get him out of me." Olivia gritted her teeth, her gaze falling on the folder. There, at the very bottom, was a disc, an old scratched disc, numerical, but marked Crowe Protocols, confidential. She slipped it into her pocket, feeling the cold metal cut through the fabric. It was a key, or a lock. Dr. Nathan Crowe's clinic stood in the center of Tacoma, its white walls of falsehood against the rusty city. Olivia walked inside, her footsteps like hammer blows on the marble floor. The receptionist, Caitlin Morrow, greeted her with a smile as sharp as a scalpel. "Ms. Reed, Dr. Crowe is expecting you," she said, her voice as smooth as the surface of the water, with something dark lurking beneath. Nathan Crowe sat at his desk, his face a mask of calm, but his eyes blazed with the cold fire of a man who had seen too much. He smiled as Olivia entered, his lips twitching like a predator sensing prey. "Miss Reed, you've returned. I hope you're not worried about your research." His voice flowed like oil coating his mind. Olivia sat up, her fingers tightening on the bag that held the disc. "I know about your experiments, Dr. Crowe, about the patients you erase and ship off to other cities. Emily Welch, John Doe, Sarah Miller, their memories excised like tumors. Why?" Crowe leaned forward, his eyes boring into hers like needles. "You don't understand, Miss Reed. I give them freedom. From the pain, from the past, from everything that gnaws at them inside, they become pure, perfect. You know what pain is, don't you? Your depression, it screams inside you like a wounded animal. I can quiet it, make you new." He held out his hand, his fingers cold as metal. "That's what you want, isn't it?" Olivia pulled her hand back, her heart pounding like a trapped bird. "I don't want to forget. I want the truth." Crowe chuckled, the sound dry as a snapping twig. "Really? She won't set you free, Miss Reed. She'll break you." He stood, his steps as silent as a ghost. "But if you insist, come back tomorrow. I'll show you what true freedom is." The night in the motel was muggy, the air thick with the smell of damp and cheap soap. Olivia sat at her desk, her laptop humming like a living thing. She was digging through data she'd gleaned from an old acquaintance, a faceless man whose fingers knew how to pick digital locks. The list of Crowe's patients was long, names, dates, diagnoses, and 3 highlighted in red. Emily Welch, John Doe, Sarah Miller, all with implants, all without a past. The screen flickered, and the laptop died. Silence fell on the room like a slab of concrete. Olivia jumped up, her hand reaching for the window. The street was empty, but a shadow flickered under the streetlight. Too fast, too alive. She clutched the recorder in her pocket, feeling the cold creep through her veins. Someone was there. Someone new. There was a note under her door that morning. A simple note, folded in half with one word written in black: "Stop." Olivia crumpled it, the paper cracking like bones under a blow. She knew this wasn't the end, but the beginning. Crowe was a shadow moving behind her, and Tacoma, a city of rusty veins and dead souls, held his secrets within its walls. She would find them, or they would find her. The rain pounded the roof, its rhythm uneven as the pulse of a dying man. Olivia stood at the window, looking out at the streets that glittered like black glass. Her fingers fiddled with the recorder, recording thoughts into the darkness. "He doesn't just erase memories," she whispered, her voice shaking with exhaustion. "He collects them, stores them, uses them. But for what?" She remembered John, what he had said about the voice in her head. She remembered Emily, muttering about shadows. And Sarah Miller, whose name lay on Crowe's desk like a trophy. This was no accident. It was a pattern. Olivia knew the answer was out there. in the sterile hallways of the clinic, in David's blueprints, in the scars on the necks of the victims. She turned off the recorder, her gaze fixed on the night. Tacoma breathed around her, its rusty veins flowing beneath the asphalt, whispering secrets that were waiting to be unleashed. Olivia stepped toward the door, her boots leaving wet footprints on the floor. She wouldn't stop. Not now. Not when the truth was so close you could taste it. Bitter, cold, like blood on your lips. The footsteps echoed loudly in the emptiness, as if someone were beating on rusty metal. Olivia stopped, listening to the echo that spread through the abandoned hospital. The beam of the flashlight trembled in her hand, snatching rickety gurneys and dust-covered machines from the darkness. The smell of antiseptic mixed with something sweet and putrid, making her throat tighten. Emily, following behind, was breathing short and sharply, her eyes shining in the darkness like those of a cornered animal. "It's here," Emily whispered, her voice almost drowned out by the creaking of the old walls. "He did it here." Olivia nodded, clenching her jaw. They had come too far to back down. The truth was hiding in these shadows, and she would bring it out, even if she had to tear the rotting silence apart with her own hands. They moved on, picking their way through corridors where the dust lay thick, muffling their footsteps. Olivia's heart pounded, each beat a reminder that the end might be waiting around the next corner. But she didn't stop. Nathan Crowe had left his tracks here, and she would find them. In a room that looked like a former operating room, they came across a stack of folders. The yellow, tattered sheets lay on a metal table like forgotten evidence. Olivia picked one up, her fingers shaking as she began to read. The pages revealed a nightmare. Implants, suppressed memories, manipulation of pain and pleasure, the destruction of personality. Crowe wanted to create perfect people, empty, devoid of a past, like mannequins with blank faces. The names of the victims flashed before his eyes. Emily Welch, John Doe, Sarah Miller. Olivia recognized some of them from her own investigations. And then the final folder, his own. Crowe had implanted the device in himself, testing the limits of his madness. The entries grew increasingly chaotic, the handwriting uneven, as if his mind were cracking at the seams. Olivia slammed the folder shut, her head pulsing with rage. He wasn't just a monster. He was a madman who thought he was a god. "We have to stop him," Emily said, her voice shaking but determined. "Before he does more." "We'll stop him," Olivia replied, though she didn't know how. Crowe was powerful, dangerous, and now unpredictable. Back in Tacoma, Olivia met with Caitlin Morrow, the clinic administrator. She had always seemed too perfect, sleek hair, calm voice. But now Olivia could see her eyes darting, her fingers fiddling nervously with her pen. "You're involved, aren't you?" Olivia snapped, her voice quiet but sharp as a blade. "You knew what he was doing, and you helped." Caitlin paled, but quickly composed herself. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, trying to sound confident, but her eyes gave her away. Olivia stepped closer. "I have the files, Caitlin, the experiments, the memory wipes, everything, and your role in it." For a second, the mask fell, fear flickering in Caitlin's eyes. But then she smiled, coldly, calculatingly. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into, Ms. Reed. Dr. Crowe is a genius. His work will change the world, and if you go any further, you'll only get yourself killed." Olivia clenched her fist, but held her tongue. "I'm not afraid of him," she lied, the lie bitter in her mouth. and I won't let him get away with it." Caitlin chuckled, turned around and walked away, leaving Olivia alone with the buzzing silence and doubts. That night, a text came from David Lynn, the former colleague who first brought up Crowe. It was short, but it made your blood run cold. Crowe was testing the implant on himself. "He's losing control. Be careful." Olivia froze, her mind spinning. If Crowe was going crazy, he would become even more dangerous. She had to act fast before he got to her. The motel walls were oppressive, the hum of the air conditioner reminded her of the cold machine Crowe used to destroy people. Olivia ran her hand over her neck as if she could feel an invisible implant ready to erase her life. She shook her head, pushing away the fear. She couldn't give in. But in her sleep, the shadows whispered, and Crowe's face looked at her with empty eyes, promising oblivion. The next day, Olivia returned to the clinic. The plan was risky, but there was no other option. In the office, Crowe met her with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Miss Reed, I'm glad you're back," he said, his voice slick as butter. "I want to show you something." He pointed to a chair with a device that looked like a torture device. "This is the future of psychiatry," he continued, a fanatical glint in his eyes. "We can remove pain, trauma, everything that holds us back. A new world, clean of the past." Olivia swallowed, but pretended to be interested. "How does it work?" she asked quietly. Crowe stepped closer, his smile widening. "I'll show you," he said, reaching for the button, but Olivia was ready. With a sharp movement, she pushed the device away. It fell with a crash. Crowe froze, then rushed at her, his face distorted with anger. "Fool," he hissed. Olivia dodged, her heart pounding in her throat. She was weaker, but desperation gave her strength. Grabbing him, she pinned Crowe against the wall, her fingers tightening around his throat. "Tell the truth," she demanded, her voice shaking with anger. "What did you do to them?" Crowe wheezed, his eyes blazing with madness. "I gave them peace," he spat. "Freed them from pain. I can give you peace too." Olivia squeezed harder, her nails digging into her skin. "You're a monster," she said icily, "and I'm going to prove it to everyone." But she saw cracks in his gaze. He was shaking, his eyes darting around like a cornered animal. He was as much a prisoner of his mind as his victims. Pushing him away, she watched him fall to the floor. "It's over," she said wearily. "Your experiments, your lies, everything." Crowe looked up, his lips twitching in a faint smile. "Really?" he whispered. "Or is this just the beginning?" Olivia turned away, the weight of the truth pressing down on her shoulders. The fight was not over. Crowe's influence extended beyond this room. But for now she had won, if only for a moment. Outside it began to rain, washing away the dirt and guilt, but not the memories. They would remain with her, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface, ready to burst forth. The silence in the clinic was thick, like fog that clings to the skin, seeping into the pores. Olivia Reed stood at the entrance, her fingers clutching the recorder, her heart beating in a rhythm that seemed alien. Night had enveloped the building, and the light from the street lamps barely filtered through the murky windows, casting shadows that moved as if alive. She knew this was the end of her investigation, her fight, her hope of finding the truth. But the truth, as always, was as slippery as a snake and as poisonous as its bite. Emily Welch stood there, pale as a ghost, her eyes empty, but with a spark of either fear or determination. They walked inside, their footsteps echoing in the empty hallways like forgotten screams. The clinic was dead, but its walls remembered everything. The pain, the lies, the lives erased. Olivia felt it on her skin, like a chill creeping up her spine. They were moving toward Nathan Crowe's office, his sanctuary where he played God by cutting out pieces of other people's souls. The door was ajar, and from the crack came the smell of antiseptic and something sweet, almost putrid. Olivia pushed it open, and the hinges creaked like bones being broken under torture. It was dark inside, but the beam of the flashlight revealed a desk littered with papers and a chair that looked like an instrument of torture. Instruments hung on the wall, scalpels, clamps, needles, their metal glinting dully like the eyes of an animal in the dark. Crowe sat at the desk, his face pale but his eyes blazing with the cold fire of a man who had seen too much. He smiled as Olivia entered, his lips twitching like a predator scenting prey. "Miss Reed, you're back. I hope you're not worried about your research." His voice flowed like oil, coating his mind. Olivia stepped forward, her fingers tightening around the recorder. "I know everything, Dr. Crowe, about your experiments, about erasing memories, about sending people to nowhere. Emily, John, Sarah, their lives cut out like a tumor. Why?" Crowe leaned forward, his eyes boring into hers like needles. "You don't understand, Miss Reed. I give them freedom from the pain, from the past, from everything that gnaws at them inside. They become pure, perfect. You know what pain is, don't you? Your depression. It screams inside you like a wounded animal. I can quiet it, make you new." He held out his hand, his fingers cold as metal. "That's what you want, isn't it?" Olivia pulled her hand back, her heart pounding like a trapped bird. "I don't want to forget. I want the truth." Crowe chuckled, the sound dry as a snapping twig. "Really? She won't set you free, Miss Reed. She'll break you." He stood, his steps as silent as a ghost. "But if you insist, I'll show you what true freedom is." He pointed to a chair, his eyes gleaming with fanaticism. "Sit down. I'll show you how it works." Olivia froze, her gaze darting to Emily, who stood by the door, her face chalky white. "Don't, Olivia," she whispered, but her voice was as quiet as the rustling of leaves. Crowe stepped toward her, his hand reaching for the button on the desk. "You're a journalist, Ms. Reed. You want to know, so find out." Olivia clenched her jaw, her fingers trembling, but she stepped forward. "Okay," she said, her voice as hard as steel. She sat down in the chair, her back against the cold metal, her hands on the armrests. Crowe smiled, his fingers running over the keys, and the device hummed as if alive. Emily screamed, her eyes wide with horror. "No, Olivia, don't." But Olivia wasn't listening. She knew this was her chance to find out what he was doing, how he was doing it, and stop him. She closed her eyes, feeling the cold tendrils of the device touch her temples, penetrate her mind. Crowe leaned toward her, his breath warm but chilling as death. "You'll understand now, Miss Reed. You'll understand what freedom is." The device hummed louder, and Olivia felt her thoughts begin to blur, like ink in water. She struggled, her fingers gripping the armrests, her nails digging into her skin. No, she whispered, her voice as weak as the rustling of leaves. I won't forget. I won't let you do this. Crowe grinned, his eyes glittering like a madman's. You can't stop this, Miss Reed. No one can. I'm the god here. I decide who remembers and who forgets. Olivia opened her eyes, her gaze fixed on his face. You're not a god, Crowe. You're a monster, and I'm going to stop you. She lunged forward, her hand snatching the scalpel off the table, the blade glinting in the dim light. Crowe recoiled, his eyes wide with surprise, but he was too slow. Olivia slammed the scalpel into his shoulder, and he growled, his hand reaching for the button. The device hummed louder, and Olivia felt her mind begin to crack like glass under attack. She screamed, her fingers loosening, and the scalpel fell to the floor. Crowe grabbed her by the throat, his eyes blazing with fury. You won't stop me, Ms. Reed. You'll be my finest work. But then Emily lunged forward, her hand grabbing the device, and she yanked it off Olivia's head. Wires snapped, sparks flew, and Crowe growled, his face twisted in pain. He let go of Olivia, his hand going to his temple where the implant protruded. No, he screamed, his voice full of terror. Don't touch it! Don't touch it! Emily stepped back, her eyes full of fear but determination. You won't do it again, she said, her voice shaking but as hard as steel. Not to anyone. Crowe fell to his knees, his fingers clutching at his temples, his eyes rolling back in his head. I don't remember who I am, he whispered, his voice as quiet as the rustling of leaves. He fell to the floor, his body convulsing, drooling. Olivia stood, her legs shaking but holding on. She looked at Crowe, at the man who had tried to become a god, but had become his own victim. His implant, his creation, had wiped his mind, just as he had wiped the minds of others. He was empty as a shell, and his eyes, once full of cold fire, were now dead as broken windows. Emily walked up to her, her hand on Olivia's shoulder. It's over, she said quietly. Olivia shook her head, her gaze fixed on Crowe's body. No, she said, her voice as hoarse as rustling leaves. This isn't the end. This is just the beginning. His network, his people, they're still out there, and they'll come for us. Emily squeezed her shoulder, her eyes full of determination. Then, we'll be ready. We'll stop them. Together. Olivia nodded, her fingers tightening around the recorder. She knew the truth they had found would not set them free. It would break them. But they would not stop. Not now. Not when the shadows of Tacoma still breathed, whispering secrets that were waiting to be unleashed. They walked out of the clinic, the night falling like a blanket. The rain pounded the roof, its rhythm uneven, like the pulse of a dying man. Olivia looked out at the streets, shining like black glass, and knew her fight was not over. But she was ready. She would find them, or they would find her.